We are through April and on to May. 1 month of the season has officially wrapped up. I'm your host, Anthony Schullo. Joined with me, as always, is Anthony Romanelli here on the Crosstown Baseball Show. Two guys talking Cubs and Sox baseball. Romanelli, we are done with April, and was it a doozy?
It was a doozy. Super happy that the Cubs are over 500. Wearing the winter cap because it's May and still 48 freaking degrees. I won't say the F word completely, although I may later. I am beyond pissed at Mother Nature. I know you can't mess with her, but 48 degrees when it's supposed to be about 65. Yeah, I've had enough. Went to opening day. It still feels like opening day. Let's move on.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and I feel like, going to games even 5 or 10 years ago, I felt like I was able to go to a game, wait 2, 3 weeks, then go to a game and go to at least a 60, 65-degree game. Now, I mean, we're like you said, we're into May 1st here. It's still freezing and spitting rain at you. I mean, it's just an unpleasant experience, and I dislike that because I don't wanna wait until June to have to go to a baseball game.
Yeah. You're far too kind to use such a gentle word like unpleasant. I my internals are swearing like a truck driver.
I don't blame you. We may be going to a game, you and I, next Tuesday night when the Cardinals come to town there at Wrigley. We may be going, and I can only hope. But just give me 65 and sunny, just please,
Yep.
something.
Yep. Anything in the 60s, I'll be happy. It's literally on my computer. It says 47 degrees. It's May.
Oh, yikes.
Mhm.
We have a lot to talk about today, folks. We're 1 month into the 2023 season. There is a ton to talk about. I know last week we talked about the state of the Cubs and the Sox, and the Sox certainly disappointing. The Cubs are having their moments, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But um, I suppose we'll start with the Cubs today because one of the things that I wanted to discuss about both teams was now that we are a month into the season, when we get to May, the calendar is flipped. It is May 1st. I want to have a broader conversation about what we've seen from these teams and what we hope to see into May, because it's one thing to have a month pass you by. When you get through May, you're looking at a third of the season is gone. And after May, I tend to think what you see about a team after May is what you're probably going to see the majority of the season.
I would agree. I think if the Cubs continue their winning ways, I think they're going to be okay. So let's hope that I don't even want to say hot start because they're just 2 or 3 games above 500. I think 2 now that they lost the couple in Miami. But I think that they're just a couple pieces away from contending. I said I think that they have a legitimate potential to make the playoffs via wild card, but they first have to, and we'll get there. They first have to shore up their bullpen.
Yeah, that bullpen. We talked about it a lot when we were doing spring training reviews. That bullpen is just a bunch of no names, which we'll talk a little bit about how to actually construct a bullpen, kind of what you would do to that bullpen. I have my own thoughts about bullpen construction. It's a lot different than it used to be, I think. We'll talk about that. But let's start with how the Cubs have been doing recently. One of the things that you sent me over the weekend was, over the weekend they went down to Florida, played Miami for 3 games. And unfortunately, in those 3 games, they actually got swept by Miami, who they're not going to knock your socks off, but they play solid baseball. They play good fundamental ball, bat to ball game. But when you look at kind of where they're at right now, as far as the standings go, like you said, they are in third, 14-3, just a game above 500, and they are sitting 5 games back behind Pittsburgh. That is just having an epiphany over there in Pennsylvania. Right. We could talk about that, but what do you make of these last kind of couple series? Because we've always said they looked competitive against the Dodgers, and they certainly taken two of 3 from the Padres. I mean, they looked really solid. I mean, they had at least 5 runs in each of those games, won 2 of 3, went to Miami and just botched it. What do you think?
I think that was their hiccup. and I'm okay with that. If we talk about, I don't know, positives from the beginning of the year, Bellinger is, again, he was my comeback player of the year, currently hitting over 300. I'm super happy with that. How can you not be? Um, my,
Hmm.
my guy, from a pitching perspective, Steele, is just killing it. Um, 13 consecutive games, I think, with a two or few earned runs. I think the last guy to do that
Hmm.
for the Cubs, last guy to do that for the Cubs was Arrieta. So
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely loving him. Nico Strico is at 36 or 37 games of getting on base. Oh my God. Like we finally have found a leadoff hitter, and you've got a leadoff hitter who is what I consider to be a future perennial all star. Um, it's hard to find many things to be sad about, honestly, um, when it comes to the Cubs start. I would say that the most shocking thing about the Marlins series is a stat that I read just yesterday. I didn't know this, that they're like undefeated or 10-1 or something in one-run games. The Marlins, they're in third.
Yeah.
They're in third place because they're 10-1 or 11-0 or whatever in one-run games. That's unheard of, and I think they're sitting in third place in the AL East, or I'm sorry, the NL East, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
it looks like wow, like after sweeping the Cubs over the weekend, they're actually tied for second,
Okay,
3 games behind Atlanta, which is like I said, I mean, they're a team, they're not gonna blow your socks off, but they've been playing some fairly competitive baseball.
yeah. Now the sad part about, at least from a fandom perspective, I can't name three Marlins. I can't name three Marlins. Um, and they're in second place behind a solid Atlanta team. And the Cubs are, I don't want to say chock full of names, but the Cubs have some pretty big names, some pretty solid players, and
Well,
they're sitting.
come on, hold on. You can name one of them, Jorge Soler.
Oh yeah, yeah, former Cub. Yeah, uh, I forgot. Now, a side note: there's been a lot of buzz, and I'm with the fans. The Marlins like reemergence of that old school uniform, that the white with that sea green or whatever. That's sharp as
The
hell.
It is those 2003 unis, yeah.
I love those. I always did. I like them now. That Sunday um, alternate uniform, that blue and that weird sea blue and that like blinding, god awful like stripe or not stripe, like smeared candy red was, oh, that's horrible. That I can't stand. That, and it makes no sense to me. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, a complete aside. I couldn't care less. It doesn't matter. Like the San Diego uh, ice cream uniforms that they look like a popsicle. Um,
I They've always had some really I mean, when you're in Miami and you're playing in that kind of eccentric area where it's just very bright and very just all energy all the time, they've always had really cool uniform colors, I think.
yeah, no. The I was talking about the Padres. I mentioned
Oh,
the
the
Padres.
Padres.
That whatever the hell that ice cream, that bright popsicle BS that they had over the weekend in Mexico. Um, anyway, yeah. So outside of the Marlins series, I'm really happy with where the Cubs are. And if we go back to my beginning conversations, if the Cubs are at 500 or a 500 or above team, I'm going to be pretty happy. Now they now Morel is hitting his head off
Mhm.
in the minors. At what he's leading all of what they consider Major League Baseball, even though he's at the minor league level, with I don't know 10 or 11 home runs and hitting out of his mind. Um, he's making so much noise. He's going to be hard to keep away. And Mervis is making
Let's
Mervis is making so much noise. He's going to be hard to keep away.
he will be. I kind of pulled it up because I did see it recently, and I mean, you mentioned he's playing well. I mean, let's really understand how well this guy's playing. I mean, he's crushing the ball. He's
He is
batting
the number one.
363.
Yeah, he's the
He's
number
batting
one player.
number one player in the minors,
Yes,
363. He's already hit 11 homers, drove in 28. I mean, this is nuts. Like, it, obviously, AAA is a whole different level, but we know the strikeouts have always been a concern with Morel. And if you look at his strikeouts now, he has, let's see, 30 strikeouts
yep,
in 91 at bats. So he's striking
around,
out 30% of the time.
yep.
So I
He's got to get
I
that down.
would he's got to get it down. But we talked about this with Wisdom, right? Like if you're striking out 30% of the time and all the rest of the time you're giving me those numbers, I'll take that.
Yeah, yeah. So overall, I'm really, really happy. Uh, Madrigal's been a nice, solid surprise.
You're welcome.
Hosmer, interestingly, Hosmer has opened the door vocally. He's opened the door for Mervis to come in, saying that he would help coach him. He's not concerned about um, losing his job. He'll mentor him, which I loved, which I loved hearing.
Hmm.
So when Mervis comes up, like, but who? I mean, who do you send down? Who do you move? How and when and why? If we look numbers
Yeah.
wise, honestly, although he's just coming back, so we'll give him a little bit of time. I think Suzuki's only hitting like 240, 245. That's a little worrisome. But again, he was out for a while, so let him get his groove back before we start criticizing him because he also, you know, jacked his muscles up so he could play longer and hard and hit harder and all that fun stuff. So we'll see. But overall, I have zero complaints about where the Cubs are.
So here's my question then. We're talking about what to expect in May. Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel it's reasonable to expect either Morel or Mervis or maybe both by the end of May?
Hmm.
That's tough.
That is tough. I'm looking at their schedule. You've got Washington that if they don't take 3 out of 4 from Washington, um, I'll be shocked. I'll be disappointed. Not shocked. I'll be disappointed. They've got Miami coming back, so I think there's going to be a little bit of revenge there. Then you've got the Cardinals series. I won't go into the rest of May.
I
Hmm.
mean, well, hold on now. I think it's important for us to go into the rest of May because if you continue on, this May gets really tough for this team, I think.
You've got yeah. I mean the Cubs Cardinals series. There's always that extra added whatever, so that's always tough. And then you've got Houston, Philly, and the Mets for 3. So before you get to Cincinnati, um, so that's a really good question. Do you bring Mervis Morel up? Uh, I would say yes. Um, I would bring right now. Ross was again. I had mentioned this from the very beginning. I wholeheartedly believed that Ross was on a short string if he didn't manage well. And right now, he's playing the hot hands as they're coming, keeping the guys in who are hitting well. So if Morel comes up, I mean, he's tearing it up. So his first series or two, whoever he plays against, he's going to hopefully do well because two things. One, um, those pitchers will have either never faced him or there's not enough tape on him. And whatever happened last year was so long ago that he's changed his approach because sometimes when guys get sent down, that's their wake up call. And I believe this was his wake up call.
Hmm.
So he'll be ready. As far as Mervis, God knows he's been ready. Um, I just don't know where you put him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, particularly with Mervis. I mean, Morel, I think you have enough utility guys, bench guys right now on the roster that I think you can do some mix and match there. But when it comes to seeing Mervis in the majors, the Cubs are probably forced to make a move with Mancini or Hosmer, and Mancini's actually doing quite well. So I think Hosmer becomes the odd man out, but I think they value Hosmer's presence on that team as a veteran leader. So it's going to come down to,
I'll
do
tell
they
you.
really want to make the room for Mervis?
I'll tell you who goes. Madrigal.
You're going to have three first basemen on that team.
Well, remember, one's DHing.
True, and he can play some corner outfielders. Mancini, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Madrigal is the odd man out.
And so if you so let's play that scenario out. If you take Madrigal out, though, it becomes even more important for you to have Morel up here.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If you pull up Morel, Madrigal goes.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Either way, it. I think if you were to talk to Jed and you were to talk to Carter Hawkins right now, I do think there is some trepidation about bringing him up, and
I
I
do too.
think they're trying to know or discover or figure out, whatever phrase you want to use, when is that right time. Um, eh, I tend to be the proponent of, you're not going to win anything this year. You're playing a little better than you thought you were going to play. You want to compete. You want to really take it up, tick up your performance in 2024. Let Mervis just get some at bats in the majors. Let him work out the kinks in the majors. Let him experience major league pitching. Let him get adjusted to and let him adjust. Do all that now, so you're not worried about it in 2024. Is
Yeah,
the way I
and
tend to think about it.
I agree with you. And you mentioned that once before, and I again will acknowledge that you're correct. I think it's important to get him up. I think a lot will be dependent upon where they are around the trade deadline. Um,
Mm.
not that either of those guys is trade bait at all. But I think where they end up around the trade deadline will make them decide. Okay, uh, maybe we're a year ahead of schedule, and not like 2015 where they were on schedule. Maybe they're a year, maybe depending on where they are at the trade deadline, maybe they're a year ahead of schedule, and they've got Mervis and they've got uh, Morel ready to go and like be impact players from the second they get up there. Because
Hmm.
I don't believe Mervis is scared of anybody or scared of anything. I think he's ready to go. Um, and I wholeheartedly believe that Morel being sent down was his wake up call. Um,
Yeah.
so it's going to be really, really interesting. And I think if the Cubs can hang on and hang around and hang on for that playoff spot, that wild card spot, maybe more moves will be made than we even know or are thinking about right now.
It, possibly, and I think it. While we've seen kind of glimmers of good play and some promise, certainly from an offensive standpoint and also in the pitching staff, I
Ooh.
tend to think that it will be less about the performance of the team as a whole at the trade deadline, because I don't see them falling very much behind, but I don't see them really
No,
winning, just going nuts. What I do expect is, as we get later into May and we start talking about Cody Bellinger playing at the level he's playing at, he's your top trade candidate. He is.
he very well may be as the comeback player of the year. If my comeback player of the year gets traded, I'm screwed. Um, insofar as the end of the year goes. Um,
Correct.
yeah, but with that being said, I think I would. And again, I was somebody who at the beginning of the year, I put him on my most improved or comeback player of the year, but I needed him to prove himself. And man, has he ever! Uh, I
Hmm.
think I think Swanson has done a great job in leading the team, and everybody, including Bellinger, is just they're going up and batting, and they seem to be fearless. I don't think anybody is out of sorts when they're at the plate. I don't think any pitcher has fooled them so badly that they're just getting killed.
Right.
Nico had his first three strikeout game of his professional career just this weekend. Prior to that, he still even got on base over the weekend. Hence the 37 or 38 game on base streak. Um, yeah, they're doing really well for who they have and where they are right now. Pittsburgh's still playing out of their mind. Once they cool off, I think the division becomes a three-team race. Uh, and I don't see the Cubs not being there. I see them 100% being there. Uh, one, a couple other interesting things in having looked at the Miami series a little bit more closely. It wasn't so much the bullpen that blew it as, and again, I did a little bit more reading this weekend. It wasn't only the bullpen, but it was the runners that the Cubs left on base. They left more
Hmm.
runners on base in those couple games than they had in any other series
Yeah.
to date. So everybody, myself included, initially blamed the bullpen. But after doing the reading, I was like, oh, it was a combination of the bullpen, which they still need to shore up, of the bullpen and the runners left on base. They're up. They were up 2-1 when we started. I don't know what the score is at the moment, but
They are still 2-1, top of four.
okay. So I'm assuming they're going to add to that and take this game, and we'll see. But so far, so good. Again, a month. So the title of our program today is 1 month down. I'd say 1 month down. I'm content. I'm happy. They're over 500. So right exactly where I wanted them to be in order for me to believe that the season would be a success. And I know it's only 1 month in and blah, blah, blah. But so far, so good.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree with you more there. One last thing I want to do talking about the Cubs here is that going into May piece, and you know, they certainly um they've certainly performed above expectations. They certainly have had some surprises, things that we've liked to see so far. But as we go into May, for them to sustain this, I mean, what do you see as the biggest area for improvement for this team right now to carry through May?
Um, well, the bullpen, without question. And I do believe that the Cubs are searching. They keep sending guys up, keep sending guys down. Um, Number two, the impact of having Kyle Hendricks back. He's on his way back. He's back in Iowa in his rehab stint, so he's coming back in the next week or two. I would guess 2 weeks at the latest. So I'm going to believe that Kyle Hendricks coming back also makes a positive impact. So
Mm,
moving forward, just having him back in the clubhouse and his leadership and his demeanor and just nothing rattles that guy. Nothing ever has. I think that goes a long way. So, assuming his rehab stint in Iowa goes as planned, he's coming up. I think that's another plus, and especially with uh, Tion. Isn't Tion still out there?
I believe
Talon,
he's still
time.
Tyon is still on the 15-day DL.
Yeah. So Tyon is still out. So bringing Hendricks back will also help. So I'm excited for May. I think a lot will be determined. A lot more will be determined in May than we think, especially with St. Louis, Houston, and the Mets. And it's four. What is
Yes.
it? It's three with Houston. Three with Houston, three with St. Louis, and 3 with the Mets, and three with the Phillies. Oh my God, I forgot about the Phillies. So
Well,
yeah.
and you even forgot about the end of the month, 3 with the Rays.
Oh, I
Hello.
didn't. Oh, hello. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So yeah, and 3 with the Rays. So it is a bigger test than I initially. I didn't scroll all the way through May. um,
Hey, yeah, I
it's a
mean,
it's a bigger
it's
test
gonna
than I
be
thought.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big test. It's gonna be. I think this is like I opened up saying, May is after May, you get a good sense of what teams really are. I think you're really gonna get that sense with the Cubs and their competition.
Yeah. And now let's check one other thing. So it's about half and half. They're half home, half away, I think, ish. Probably 15 and 15, just about.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So So that's good. Um, Miami and St. Louis back to back at home, then on the road for one, two, three different series, and then back with the Mets, Reds, and the Rays. So yeah, a lot going on, a lot of different teams, and so we'll see. But all solid teams. Well, although Washington and Miami, if they should get 4 out of 6 in these two series, that's my hope. Or I'm sorry, there's
Yeah.
7. So 4 or 5 out of let's go 5 out of 7 for shits and giggles.
Right.
But if they go 4 out, 4 out of 7, win 4, lose 3, again above 500, I'm okay with that. Let's go 5 out of 7 to make me really happy because really it's all about me.
Clearly, right. That's why we're here.
That's why.
So, um, love to hear that, though. I think we both are excited to see what the Cubs can do the rest of this year. April was certainly a surprise, and right now, or the way I like to think about the Cubs is anything is a bonus, right? Anything above our very low expectations were a bonus. Um, having said that, you know who didn't have low expectations coming into this season? It was the White Sox, and you know who
Woo!
is played the most piss poor version of baseball up to this point. It's the Chicago White Sox. And I'm going to be honest, Romanelli, I don't even know where to start. I'm kind of at a loss for words. And I told you I wanted to kind of get on my soapbox today. And I don't even know if I want to exert the energy to do it because I've spent so much time over the last week exerting frustration and disappointment and a little sliver of anger towards this team. Um, Unlike the Cubs, who have performed to expectations, if there even were any, and maybe exceeded them in areas, the White Sox have not only not met the expectations, but they have come short and they have fallen short in a massive way, something that we have never seen, at least in my recent memory,
No,
and probably in yours as well. At least for a team that had expectations, right? I'm not talking about Cubs losing
no,
100
yeah,
games.
yeah,
This is a competitive team that was supposed to go deep in the playoff, have a playoff race, be in the hunt, and they have failed miserably. So before we start talking about this, I want to kind of frame this for us because just to get a sense of how bad this is, okay? So first, these Sox right now have the third worst record in baseball. They are 8-21, and they're 9 games out of the Central. Okay, the Twins are leading that division with 17 wins and 12 losses. The Sox have a negative 65 run differential. All right, they have not won a series so far this year. They've tied one series, and that was the 4-game opening set against the Astros. They recently had a 10-game losing streak, and they broke that up yesterday with actually a really solid win yesterday where Andrew Vaughn walked it up off with a 3-run homer in the 9th inning of that game yesterday. I was excited and thrilled when I saw that ball leave Andrew Vaughn's bat and immediately was like, don't get excited. This is one game in an 11-game stretch, and I'm not going to give him too many props for winning this game because I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay Rays had 9 runs on the board and went into the 8th and 9th innings leading that game by 3 or 4 runs, and the Sox had already given up 9 runs, already given up 7 runs. Or excuse me, yeah, 9 runs the Sox had already given up by the end of the game. So quite frankly, I appreciate that we won that game yesterday, but the Sox had no business winning that game. Okay,
here,
they had no business.
no, and I think that home run in the bottom of the ninth was uh, more than anything. Yes, it was a victory, but it seemed to be a sigh of relief more than anything. And I don't know, and I get the walk off, and I would have done the same. Everybody jumps up and down and around, but what's most disappointing from my perspective, just in looking at their record, yes, they're only 8-21, which is god awful. But here's the awful part of only being 8-21. They've only won 4 games at home. Only 4 games out of 29 at home.
Yes,
That's horrific. And I know the A's are god awful. They're the only team, I think. Oh, so what? They're the third. You said that they have the third worst record outside of the Royals and the A's. and
Yeah.
to even to be in the same conversation with the A's at this point, that's embarrassing, and especially with everything that is going on in Oakland and the move and just all of it. Um, the fact that the White Sox have only won 4 games when you and I both picked them to win the division. They've won 4 games. You and I and 7 other people that we know can get together and win 4 games. Like,
4 games at Guaranteed Rate Field. Line
yeah,
them up. Let's go,
yep,
boys.
let's go. I've got 7 buddies. You've got a few friends. Like, let's get them together. It's like it was like the in Portland the battered boys of baseball or whatever that. Have you ever seen that documentary?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's so good. It was a group of like ultimately like ragtag guys that oh my god, what's his name? Kurt Russell's father um, was a baseball fan and put a team together to prove that he was a good enough coach, manager, whatever, that he could win. And he's one of the reasons that there is no independent league anymore because he got a group of
Mm.
guys you need to see. It's called
Okay, what?
I think it's called the Battered Boys of Baseball,
The Battered Boys of Baseball.
something like that. The Battered Boys of something. I can Google it while we're talking. But I watched that last year. Uh, Given to me, a friend of mine told me about it, and I watched it, and it's fantastic. And I feel like those guys, if that group of guys was playing the White Sox right now, those guys would beat today's current White Sox. And that's not a joke, and it's not an insult to the Sox. But nothing is going right for nothing. Nothing's going right. Everybody's injured. I am not. I refuse to blame the manager. No way. Not a chance in hell. This is on Kenny and um, uh,
Rick Hahn.
thank you, and Han, without question. And everybody's telling Reinsdorf to sell the team. And you can get into the Reinsdorf speech or his press conference or whatever in a minute. But this is on Reinsdorf for being overly loyal and Kenny being way too fucking comfortable, and Han just not doing his job. Kenny, in my estimation, and I wholeheartedly believe this, um, I don't believe Kenny does. I don't want to say anything because clearly the man works, but he's got such a cushy position that to him it doesn't matter. And that's the shame. When you're in a city like Chicago, you should be super competitive every every year, anytime. Like
Hmm.
Chicago, the fact that I mean, if any way you look at it, St. Louis is a mid-market team. They've always been a phenomenally good organization. The 11 or 12 World Series prove that. But still a mid-market team. It's not New York. It's not LA. It's not Chicago. St. Louis knows what they're doing. All of a sudden, Tampa, the last since their inception, they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
They've got the right people in the right places. Kenny is not the right person. Rick is not the right person. They need to go. Jerry needs to let him go. Jerry needs to cut the cord. Or in the last 48 hours, you've seen all the guys from almost like back in the 70s when the guys were so embarrassed they would put the paper bags over their heads and cut the holes in them. They're back. Those guys in that look. And there were guys, there was like security or something outside of guaranteed rate, like telling the fans not even to come in. Like, what kind of mindset and what kind of image does that set for a professional organization? That's horrible from top to bottom. So many things need to change. So many.
It it I don't want to be over dramatic and say it's a rock bottom situation, but I am, all things considered, really close to calling it that. I mean, we have, like you said, guys injured, guys not being open, Luis Robert not being open with the manager and the training staff about he's not feeling a certain way. So it looks like he's dogging it down the line. So much so that the other day Pedro Grafal benched him because he was dogging it down the line.
And good for
You have,
him.
good for him. You have
Yep.
guys not catching balls in the outfield, making mental mistakes, and 18 and 21 is what to show for it. And I'm gonna make this very clear. No other team in baseball, in professional sports, gives the folks that run the team this much of a leash. Going back to your comments about Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn. In any other team, if you can't bring success to a team in 5 years, you're gone. These guys have been in the roles for 15, 20 years. It's time.
It
Enough is
was
enough.
it was the same with Reinsdorf and the Bulls and Paxson and Gar. The Gar
Mm,
Pax program, they didn't do anything. And Reinsdorf again is loyal to a fault. You have to love him for being loyal. You do, but you're trying to win. And I believe the guy who went on that 7-minute rant specifically talked about the White Sox caught lightning in a bottle like no other team. They haven't
yes.
they haven't won a playoff series since '05. Not one
Right.
single playoff series. And this isn't even comparing Cubs to Sox, but the Cubs since '05 have won significantly more playoff series than the White Sox. But to see to that didn't I didn't even realize that. Not because I don't follow the Sox. I don't, but I'm not anti-Sox. I'm not a Sox hater, but I did not realize that they have not won a playoff series since they won the World Series in '05. There's your 15 years with Hahn and Williams. There it is, right there. Those guys need to go.
And I'll frame it for you another way. This makes it even
Sure.
more disturbing. Is here in 2025, we're coming up on 20 years that the Sox have not won a playoff series.
Yeah.
That is insane to think about. And at this point, if it, let's just let's just frame it this way, okay? I don't even know. It's just again, it blows my mind. They're 8-21. Okay, say they lost these 10 games over the last week and a half. Say they go on a 10-game winning streak.
Right.
All right, we're still 18-21, folks. Like, this is a huge hole. There's no way in hell they're going on a 10-game winning streak. If they go 5-5, they're still what, 13-26? Like, this is not going to go well. There's no way in hell they go into May lighting it up and making up this deficit. I think they've dug too big of a hole for themselves. Pedro Grifol in the spring said, you can't win a championship in April, but you can lose it. I think they've lost it.
I think I think they may have. I think you have to at this point, if you have any pride whatsoever as a professional athlete, and this is no joke, you need to kick the tires in your car, kick the tires in the car, and be like, okay, let's reinflate these tires. Let's start over. Forget April. It's over. It's over. One game at a time, one inning at a time, one pitch at a time. Are they going to rattle off 10 wins in a row? Highly unlikely. Can they win? Like if I'm them, here's my thought process. One game at a time, one inning at a time. But realistically, one series at a time. Let's win the first game. You win the first game in any series, you always feel good going into that second game. Always, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. Win the first game of every series. You win the first game of every series, you have a different mindset. And you know what? Maybe a ball that didn't bounce your way in April starts bouncing your way in May. And that maybe that's all it takes. You have to at this point forget that April happened. If you don't, they're only gonna compete with the Royals for the basement in the Central.
So here's my problem with that, though. I agree with you in premise. I think that's exactly what you got to do. All great teams who've overcome issues like this, overcome these bad streaks, have done exactly that. Now, this is not a dig at Pedro Grifol because, like you
No,
said, I think he's absolutely great. I think he has the right mindset. That's not him to blame. But
nope.
he says after all these losses, when that press is talking to him in the post-game press conference, he always says, "We got to flush this one. We got to flush this one." Well, guess what? They're going to need new plumbing over there at Guaranteed Rate Field because they got to flush every goddamn day. So my problem with them is not that they need to flush it, and I don't think that message is not important. I think it is, but I don't think the guys, the 9 men on the field, can flush it. I said this last week. I don't think they have the mental fortitude, the grit, the wherewithal to overcome this. I think they're an emotionally immature team. I don't think they understand how to get themselves up from this, how to get up when they're down. And I do think, number one, that rests on the players, obviously. Number two, going back to Rick Hahn, it absolutely has everything to do with the people who had faith in these players and put this team together. And I'm starting to think, when you think of your Luis Roberts, your Eloy Jimenez's, your name anyone who's in any, been in the league for the last 5 years that hasn't produced. Yohan Moncada, who hasn't produced consistently. It's been 5 or 6 years, guys. We're done. This has been too long. You've had enough time to prove it. I think this team, as it's constructed, is just not going to do it.
Nope. And um, again, in following the Cubs, I follow their farm system, and they're pretty stacked. I don't know enough about the White Sox farm system, but let's just say they have the same kind of May as they have April. Everybody's gone. Then anybody who's wearing any one of those 9 guys is gone. You've been given 40 games and you're not producing at all, injured or not. Like Tim Anderson, I know he's the face of the franchise. That dude's so freaking injured, and he drives me nuts. Everybody loves that guy. Everybody loves him, but he's been so injured that he's more of a deficit to the team than anything else. And as the middle infielder, the single most important infield position, you can't be that injured all the time.
No. And so you bring up a really good point that is essentially worth really thinking about now in the next month as we get into May. What does May mean for the White Sox? And I'm confident I will go on record as saying this May means everything for the White Sox. And
I would agree.
the reason it does is because if they continue this play through May, this will fundamentally change the immediate future for this franchise. Because, like you said, there is no way we go into June with them struggling where there's not conversations about everybody being on the table, talking about deals for Tim Anderson, talking
Yep.
about deals for Dylan Cease, who's not going to sign an extension with this crap team after they tank this year,
Nope.
especially with Scott Boras as his client, his agent. So I this is going to tell us everything we need to know. And I if they're going to do that in May, just freaking do it and get it done. Like, just get it done. Let's all take the shot and experience the pain and get over it. Because if they do this in May, I promise you, I'm not going to promise you because it's the White Sox. So everything I think they should do, they don't freaking do. I would think that they're going to sell at the deadline. Rick Hahn, maybe even Kenny Williams are gone. And then this window suddenly closes shut in a huge way.
Yeah. It's hard to deny anything you've just said. Um, I don't see it going well for them if this mindset continues. They've and to be complete, I two things. One, I did not know that Boris was Cease's agent. That pisses me off. Um,
Yep.
that just pisses me off. Uh, so if I'm looking, yeah, I don't know. That bothers me because as whatever as this sounds, Boris becomes an additional headache. He's not. He's single-handedly, you know, made Chris Bryant cry because Bryant wanted all the money in the world. So I'm going to go to Colorado and get all my money. He's he's too much, and you're going to throw some gigantic presentation about how fantastic Cease is, and somebody's going to way overpay for Cease, and it's just going to be it's not that's not going to help the White Sox in the long run. And if we're looking at May's schedule for the White Sox, you've got Minnesota, Cincinnati, Kansas City. So you've got the first half of May, they have a legitimate chance of winning. Okay. And then you've got Houston. You've got Houston for three, and then Cleveland, Kansas City, and Cleveland again. And then Detroit. So you have a legitimate chance of making up lost ground. Now, like you said, even if they rattle off 10 in a row, they're still screwed. But they
Right.
do have again, if, like we said, if they forget April, forget it completely. Just forget it and move forward. The schedule in May is favorable for the White Sox. It is for them to solidify themselves. I don't want to say make noise, but to
Right.
solidify themselves. You just do. You've got. I mean, if you look at only Clevenger. Oh no, even ooh. I don't think I knew that Kopech was not doing that well. Um,
No, no.
and Lance Lynn, both of their ERAs are over 7. I did not realize that they were both having that
Right.
rough of a year. Okay, I didn't realize that. So that I don't know, that throws a kink in the whole thing. Yeah, there's not a lot, as sad as it makes me. There's not a lot right now for the White Sox to look forward to. They've got to dig deep. They just do. There's no easy way out of this, man. And I thought,
I
and
just
we had the conversation. We thought the shoe was going to be on the other foot. Like I was hoping that the Cubs would please be at 500. And right now, the Cubs have the lowest hard rate hit against. Like the Cubs pitching is so good that they're not
yeah.
hitting the ball hard against the Cubs. The Cubs have the strongest middle defense in the National League. I can't think of 3 things for the White Sox that are going well. I mean, you've got Dylan Cease. Let's say you trade Dylan Cease, then what? Then they're as bad as Oakland.
That's the thing is it all comes back to the main point is if they're not performing through May,
He's
I'm
gone.
tired. He's gone. He's gone by the trade. I'm tired of playing this game of just treading water and being in a position where, oh well, we're 500 or oh, there's still a chance we can make it up in the season. That's why I say if I want them to crash, I want them to crash hard so that's indisputable that they're not going to do anything. I don't like this. Oh, will they? Won't they? Whatever. No,
Here's
no.
and
I
here's
want them to crash hard.
and here's the other problem. If you know, like I do, how injured, and I continue to use Tim Anderson because he's one of the faces of the franchise. That dude is too injured. Somebody's going to take a chance on him. But taking a chance on a guy who's oft injured doesn't mean he's not going to be oft injured.
Right.
And the
Right.
same with Eloy. And again, Eloy as a former Cub, I have that soft spot for him. So I want him to do well. I do. But everybody else, man, I don't know. I just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet for the White Sox.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is, what I do day to day, Romanelli, you're in the education space. Your career has been a teacher. I've been in the business world and corporate world, and I can tell you from my experiences, the person at the top really drives culture and really drives expectation and drives excellence. And if your person at the top of any business organization isn't committed to excellence, that does trickle down. And so we need to start having serious conversations about Jerry Reinsdorf and if he's the guy that's ever going to bring a championship back to the Chicago White Sox. And I bring that up not only because that's a legitimate consideration, but I bring it up because Jerry Reinsdorf did participate at Milken University, or excuse me, Milken Institute. They had a Milken Institute Global Conference, and one of the sessions they had in this conference was called "Game Changers: The New Business of Sports." And of course, Jerry Reinsdorf came out of his hole in guaranteed rate field and went to this panel and was on the panel. And we have a gentleman here on Twitter by the name of Blake Schuster, very nicely took out all the quotes and put it in a thread. And I wanted to read some of what he said, and I wanted to talk about it in the context of what is happening right now with the White Sox. So Blake went ahead and pulled some of these more pertinent quotes. So let's start from the top of what he pulled. So Reinsdorf had said, sports is different than any other business. For example, your competitors are your partners. You earn probably half of your income in conjunction with your competitors. At the same time, you are at the mercy of your dumbest competitors, particularly in baseball. If you have somebody who decides he wants to spend $42 million on a second baseman who hits 202 and one comes along for you, you're probably going to have to spend the same money. The whole thing is irrational. Then he went on to talk about the fans a little bit. So this is, I think, the most interesting part. My approach has always been I never really cared about making money. I just wanted to win. Now, that's not what I wanted to do in business. The first week I was in sports, somebody said to me, if you listen to the fans, you'll soon be sitting with the fans. You can't allow your decisions to be guided by emotions of what you think people want. At the same time, you have to consider what your fans are thinking, or they're not going to buy your tickets. Sports is a business of failure, but the fact that you finished second or third or fourth, it doesn't mean you had a bad year. I think the important thing to fans is while they want you to win championships, they want to know that when they get down to the last month of the season, you still have a shot. You're
Right.
still playing meaningful games. If you
Yep.
can do that consistently, you'll make your fans happy. If you think that this is this is interesting. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I just can't. This one is a doozy. If you think that you know more than your GM or head coach, then you've got the wrong GM. Sometimes you just have to bite your tongue and have faith, but you can't make the decisions for your baseball people. You've got to let them make the decisions. Tony La Russa.
Right.
But um, I I just like walk the walk and talk the talk, Jerry. Like
Yeah.
if these are the things that you really believe, why have we one not seen it? And two, why aren't if you think listening to your fans to some degree is important, well, open your ears, buddy.
There's there's a couple things here that were mentioned in the last 72 hours on talk radio because since I got hooked on everything going on with the White Sox, I've been listening a little bit more closely. And it makes perfect sense. If I use the Blackhawks as a comparison, the Wirtz family just went from top, and then the father passed, and he passed it down to his son. Okay, so the
Mm.
exact same thing is going to happen with Reinsdorf. Here's why: if Reinsdorf sells the family, if I remember hearing this correctly, if he sells the White Sox, did I say sell his family? Holy crap! Um, I don't know if I did. You can rewind it and find out later. But Reinsdorf, as of right now, is worth $2.2 billion as a
Yeah.
businessman. As a businessman, he's worth $2 billion. He sells the team. He takes a 20% hit, if that's the number I remember correctly. That's $10 million. He's not a businessman is not going to take a $10 million hit. So he is either going to just die, and actually, that's exactly what's going to happen. He's going to die, and then Michael Reinsdorf, his son, is going to get the team. And hopefully, at that point, or Jerry says, I need to step down and I'm keeping it in the family. That's the smartest move for the Reinsdorf is he needs to, or the White Sox, he needs to step down. He needs to step away. Everybody's like, and you saw the between the bagged heads and the signs now in the stands, like sell the team. He's never selling the team. So all the White Sox fans need to get that out of their damn heads. Here's why. It's one of the richest markets in the country. You know that. I know that. He's never selling the team. The team needs to go to Michael, needs to go to his son. He needs to step away. I don't know from a legal perspective if he just signs it off and over to his son, but he needs to step away from the day to day. He needs to, and then he needs to let Michael fire fire Kenny and Han, and you start over. And then I'm going to go a step further. I don't give a flying F what anybody says. You get rid of guaranteed rate and you move to Soldier Field and you demolish that. No, you think I'm kidding? You demolish Soldier Field. You have the parking there. You demolish Soldier Field and make that a state of the art stadium that can then host a million. I'm telling you, that is prime land. What are they going to do with that land? The Bears are leaving. If the White Sox are, I'm telling you, and I've said it first a long time ago. Nobody else has said this. Have the score call me. The White Sox, Reinsdorf has $2 billion. He's got the money. Move, get rid of guaranteed rate. Nobody goes there anyway, and I know nobody, but there's not enough that goes on around there the way it does in Wrigleyville. And I'm not comparing night to day, but there's nothing there. There's not enough of a draw, and there's enough of a draw at Soldier Field. Just the location itself, it's beautiful. Imagine being right there, right off the lake, the same way the Bears were. It's beautiful, and that backdrop. Oh my God! And the parking's there.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And
And if you're going to start over, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to cut you off. If you're going to start over, you know what? Blow it all up, and move. And in 5 years, the Bears will be in Arlington, and in 5 years, you be where the Bears were, and a
I
new stadium, everything,
I
everything.
I, I love that. I love it. I think the blow up needs to happen, and I know there are fans out there that will say, "Well, Michael Reinsdorf, it's the bloodline." I don't agree with that.
Because
I think you
look at
look at
what the Blackhawks did,
with well, not well, the Bulls,
and
right? So
yeah,
the Bulls are under the stewardship of Michael Reinsdorf more than Jerry these days, and look at what he did bringing in Arturis, bringing in Mark Eversley.
yeah,
Well, Arturis hired him, but that doesn't happen without hiring Arturis.
right,
Like
right,
you can complain about all the things the Bulls have done in the last couple of years. I think there's a lot of factors there, but the story's the same. Mike Reinsdorf has stewardship over that organization as I believe he's actually the CEO.
yeah.
So give him that for the White Sox and let your son run the business and hire his people, move to a new ballpark. Can you imagine? Hold on one second here. Let's talk about this for a second. Could you imagine? I know you don't want to imagine this but this is a reality here. If they're following that game plan and they're cleaning house, okay, they get all new people. They really get this team going. They're competitive and they're at a new state of the art ballpark right off of the lake. All of a sudden, it's very possible that this doesn't always be a Cubs town. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is very possible that, like, the Sox, you need to stop caving to your brothers on the north side.
You need to
You need
stop
to be able to.
caring. Stop caring. Everyone, here's the difference. Like from a fan perspective, every White Sox fan, not every, but like the generalization is that the White Sox fan hates the Cubs and everything that they stand for, not because they win, but because it's a Cubs town. If the White Sox would stop caring and just start winning, because I'll be the first to admit
Right.
when the White Sox went to the World Series, I watched every single game.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you? You're still, yes, you might not be a White Sox fan, but you're still a Chicago fan. And my God, you don't want them to lose. You don't want them to get swept. You want them to be competitive. And they won. And I was glad that they won, and I was happy for the White Sox. And yeah, if they and I will also say this to add to your point, if they add the new stadium, and again, you and I are the only ones talking about this. They blow it all up, create a new stadium, then as a tourist, Wrigley Field brings people, tourists, baseball fans have to go to Wrigley. That's on their bucket list. Now, the White Sox have a brand new state of the art. Now, instead of being at Wrigley for a weekend, now you're in Chicago for 2 weeks because you're at Wrigley for one and the new White Sox Stadium for another. You just are. You are.
Yeah.
Or the Crosstown Classic thing, you come in for that because then you get 2 for 1, whatever. I'm telling you, if you're going to blow it
Yeah.
up, blow it up. All of
You
it.
have to, and I agree with you, and I say that, and I say making it
And,
more of a Sox town, not as a fan, but like purely as a business opportunity. Like
right.
you as you're running your business, you should be able to want to compete with the other team side of a town and have the best of the best. That should be the level of excellence that you expect out of your Chicago baseball club, and
And,
we just not seeing it right now.
and if you look at, and to the credit of the Mets, even though Cohen is, I don't know if you can hear me anymore. The cat just knocked
Yeah,
over the
I can.
microphone. Cohen from the Mets is finally fed up with it being a Yankee town, and he's like, you know what? I'm going out and I'm spending the money, and I don't care, and I no longer care about the Mets. I'm sorry, about the Yankees.
Right.
He doesn't care at all, and that's what whoever takes over, or when Reinsdorf steps down, or the fans force him out, or whatever. That's what the White Sox need to do. Stop caring. Stop. I legitimately don't watch the White Sox or necessarily care about everything going on because I'm a Cubs fan, but I'm never gonna like so many old school White Sox fans just bash the Cubs because they exist. And that's just
Right.
dumb. It's just
Right.
dumb. The same way the Cubs wouldn't trade for a White Sox player and vice versa forever. They've finally gotten past that. And we got who was the lefty we got from you guys that didn't pan out so well?
Quintana.
Thank you. Yeah, and then you got Eloy. So like
Eh,
so if that's the first baby step, fine. Because you know what? I'll take Dylan Cease as a Cub tomorrow.
yeah.
The only problem is Boris is his agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to go back to the 1998 Matt Kirchner and John Garland trade. You don't want to do that again,
No, we're good.
or the blockbuster 1992 George Bell for Sammy Sosa trade.
I'll take that.
I'll do redos on that.
Yeah, I'll do redos on that. Sammy just needs to come back.
Oh,
Sammy needs to apologize, and then he'll be welcomed back into Cubs lore. He deserves it, but he also needs to apologize. Once he apologizes, then people will forgive him. He's never going to apologize, so he'll never be part of the history of the future of the Cubs. He just won't be.
well, shoot, we're going in. That's a whole other topic
Yep.
for. We could talk about that for another hour. Jesus. Well, folks, we're getting into May here. Obviously, we'll keep talking about what happens with both these teams into May. Obviously, the Cubs are in a position where we'll start. We'll see if they remain competitive through May here, and then for the White Sox, it is looking like this is going to be
Rough.
really a rough, potentially rough May. Definitely a rough year, but a month where this could really determine what this franchise looks like going forward. Which I don't think we've really been able to say that for any of these teams for quite some time.
Agreed. I do have one last thought before we leave.
Yeah.
What if between now and next Monday we start doing steroids and our show next week we're on steroids? Our show next week we're on steroids. I think that'd be awesome.
Is that the appropriate time to have the Sammy conversation?
I don't care. Let's just be on roids for a week just to see how it affects our announcing abilities. Our
friends,
podcast abilities.
friends, families, daughters, sisters. You didn't hear anything.
Nope, not a thing.
Folks, if you haven't been following us already, or you
For the
don't
love
follow
of
us on
God.
Facebook, right? Where have you been, folks? We're a month into the season here. You should be following us on Facebook. You should be subscribed to us on YouTube, because YouTube is where you actually get our beautiful faces every week, for better or for
Big
worse.
ass hat.
Yes. So definitely, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care, folks.